Hey everyone, welcome to the Sustain the Range podcast. I'm Lauren, your host, and this podcast is a personal exploration of my experiences in everything ranching. From beef operations to training horses to sustainable farming and regenerative practices, we'll cover it all. Each episode features enlightening conversations with guests who bring their unique perspectives and expertise. Whether they're seasoned ranchers or first-generation farmers, we all share a common bond and deep appreciation for the land and the livestock we raise. Tune in each week for engaging discussions, inspiring stories, and practical insights from the ranching community, and let's embark on this incredible journey together. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode. In this episode, I talk with Meredith Barrett. Meredith is an equine and canine practitioner with a passion for healing horses and dogs using natural and alternative solutions. Currently residing on a ranch in Wyoming alongside her husband, she devotes her days to caring not only for horses, but also for the land that sustains them. Her journey into the world of natural therapies began with a pivotal moment on a remote ranch in New Mexico. It all started when her mare gave birth to a foal named Santo, whose unique health challenges sparked Meredith's exploration into alternative healing methods. Meredith has a certification in Equine Acupressure from Northwest School of Animal Massage. She completed an intensive 3-year homeopathic mentorship in Bowen Therapy with Dr. Madeline Ward, and she's also completed certifications in Craniosacral Therapy. With her wealth of knowledge and experience, Meredith offers valuable insights and perspectives, so make sure to tune into our great conversation. All right, well, thank you so much, Meredith, for coming on today. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and I am really excited to learn about you and your business and natural equine health and things like that. So thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lauren. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, awesome. So I thought I'd just give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us, where you're from, where you grew up, what your background is in horses or agriculture, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. So I guess I'll just go right ahead. I'm actually from Atlanta, Georgia, originally. And in college, when I was thinking about my career, I actually studied ecology, but coming out of college, when I was looking for my job, there was things that check boxes or like things that I was looking for that I wanted to do, which included being outside, doing physical work, working with animals has always been forefront of my mind, doing kind of conservation work. And at that time also, I was very interested in where my food came from. So I started looking into the beef industry, beef business and ranching, and I wanted to go work for a ranch that was doing things sort of with conservation in mind. And so out of college, I applied to a ranch in Montana, actually, and they declined me because I didn't have enough horse experience. So I got a friend of mine connected me with a barn in Athens, Georgia, and I worked at a dressage barn for a little while, gaining horse experience and riding horses and such. And then so from there, I did actually end up getting hired at that Montana ranch, and then, a year or two later. And it was kind of all downhill from there, right? I loved it so much. I was like, this is all I want to do. And it just felt right. And so while that ranch didn't really have enough work for me, because they were just going into the winter season, it kind of planted that seed. And so from there, I just started looking at ranches, applying to ranches. And then I got hired on a ranch in New Mexico with ranch lands. And so that was kind of where it all got going for me. And, it's been my passion ever since. I feel strongly very much about grazing and cattle and beef and all of that. And then but from that started, my passion for horses started to sort of show itself, I guess. I became very, enthusiastic about horses and riding horses and caring for horses. And then so that's kind of, it's kind of turned into what it is now, which I believe strongly in continued education and, continuing to learn. And so I've went through a lot of programs. I'm certified in equine acupressure, craniosacral, I've been through a mentorship program with a holistic vet, which was pretty transformational for me. That was where everything changed for me in terms of how I view health, how I view animals. Uh, and that was mostly focused on, holistic health with a focus on homeopathy and nutrition, of course, as well. And so from there, that's where everything kind of kicked off as far as my now business, Remuta Body Works, and helping people with their horses and helping them improve their health and overall management and care for their horses.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It sounds like you have quite the experience. What was it like for you when you first got to that ranch, or the one that you said that you didn't get the first Montana ranch position because you didn't have enough experience, and then you ended up going back to that? What was that kind of like for you? Did you reapply to it, or did they just need you to go and get more experience in order for them to hire you on? Or
It was satisfying actually because they're like, oh yeah, you need more horse experience. And I think they just kind of turned me down thinking they would never hear from me again.
Yeah.
And so I applied again like a year later and I was like, hey, I got that horse experience. And I think it really impressed them because they're like, oh, okay, you stuck with it. And so yeah, it was satisfying. They did hire me, even though, like I said, they didn't really have work, but I guess they it was kind of just a shoe in where it's like, yeah, just come check it out, see what you think. And yeah, it was cool. It was a really beautiful place, and a great experience. And so it was very satisfying that it kind of came to fruition like I hoped.
Yeah, no, and that's great. And I talk a lot about, on this podcast, about getting into agriculture. And a lot of my guests, I ask them for advice on, if somebody's looking to get into it, how do they do it? That's just a really good testament to you, sticking with it and, getting turned down and not giving up on it, knowing that you really want to do this. And then, a year or so later, you reapply, and, that says a lot about you. So that's
Yeah, well,
very
I still
cool.
was like in, a fish out of water because I'd been working at a dressage barn. And so I go to this big ranch and he hands me a rope halter, like all crumpled up. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
I was still super green regardless. But
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you learned a lot there.
yeah, of course. Absolutely.
So what was the New Mexico ranch like for you? Was it pretty remote? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was really remote. But that's never been a problem for me. I prefer that actually. I'm
Yeah, me
more
too.
inclined to solitude than you know, the alternative. So it was very remote, and and I was working as an intern, and there were other interns there, and sometimes the interns were great, and then sometimes not so great, and so it's just kind of you had to just people are so important, right, and who you work with, and so it's kind of just you know it's just you and a couple other folks out in the middle of nowhere trying to get a job done, and uh, it was a neat experience, and it definitely now we have interns here at the ranch, and I think one thing I like to tell them is I think a lot of times people think that they're not learning anything, right? It's like, oh, I'm just fencing, I'm just going out every day, I'm just it's not cowboying, I'm not learning to rope, or whatever. And there's still so much gold there that you're learning. You're gaining independence, you're gaining a sense of can do. For me, one big takeaway when I was in New Mexico at that ranch, it didn't feel like much at the time, but then you go back to your family who hasn't seen you in a while, or your friends, and you realize that you've changed, that you're totally different, and that it's hard for them to
Yeah.
relate to you because not only is your lifestyle completely different from theirs, but also just you've grown a lot, even just doing the mundane crap that you don't want to do, right? Where um for out there, it was like if you get stuck out in the middle of the ranch, you got to figure it out. You got to change the tire, or you got to do whatever it takes to get back home, or or fixing drinkers or floats or whatever that's down. You got to kind of just figure it out, as opposed to having someone hold your hand and all that. And so there's so much character that's built there that you don't realize is happening
Yeah.
through that, what seems like, not fun work. It's not glamorous, but there's so much that you can take away and that you're developing underneath the surface.
Yeah, right. And just talking about this with another guest that I had on about, the romanticized version of ranching that you see on Instagram and, pictures and TV shows and things like that. And, there's so much more to it. And I love how you brought up about, going back to your family and, having changed a little bit because I've definitely experienced that too. I was just visiting family and went to meet with some friends who I talk to frequently, but spent a couple days with them, and all I want to talk about now is ranching and horses and stuff. And then I had a thought in my head, like, oh my gosh, do I not have anything in common with my friends anymore? Like I just want to talk about this, but they don't, they listen to me, not being mean or anything. But it's like when you're around people that understand the lifestyle and you're around your ranching people, it's just so different because, and I tried to explain to my friends that, oh, what I'm doing is not just a 9 to 5 job. It's your entire life. It's not only your work. It's not only how you spend your time, but it's, shapes who you are as a person, and you change and you develop in ways that I don't really think that you can get anywhere else. There's not many places that you can go to learn some life lessons that being on a ranch can give you.
Yeah, it's so hard to explain to people
Yeah.
who don't understand it. And even, when they come visit here, they realize how wonderful it is, but really the the magic is spending time on a place for an extended period of time where you see the seasons come and go and you see the people come and go, and the cattle, you go through all the processes of, calving, branding, weaning, all that, seeing the cycles. That's when like the magic really happens. And it's hard to put that in words, and it's hard for people to understand that, especially if they're not, from around it, or they're living in town and have no idea, their access to the outdoors as a park. Um, when your entire world revolves around animals and you're outside all the time, regardless of the weather, it's really hard to, um, synthesize for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So on the and the ranch in New Mexico, is that I read on your website that that's kind of where your mare gave birth to a foal, I believe I read. Could you tell us a little bit about that, and was that kind of the turning point of where you started looking into some of these alternative therapies and helped you along that path?
Yeah. So, the birth of all this really was with my horse Santo. When he was born, because I bred my mare and went through all that, and when he was born, like from 3 months on, I just started having health issues with him. He had terrible cracks up the front of his hooves as a foal, before he'd ever even been trimmed. His foal coat took a long time to shed out. It was real dingy and rough, um, and then he would get cuts really easily, and they would get infected. And then the final straw for me was when he when I gelded him, the gelding got infected, and so at the end he kind of went downhill after that. He kind of got thin, and he wasn't in good shape, and so I was kind of at a turning point where I was like, this something's wrong with this horse. I don't know what happened. Like he's just like weak, and of course the vet had nothing to say about it. They're like, oh, he's just, I don't know what's going on. Meanwhile, he had tons of antibiotics and whatnot from all the infections he had gotten. And I just knew something was off with him, and I needed help because the traditional system, as it were, didn't have anything to offer. And so that's when I got involved with my mentor, Madeline Ward, Dr. Madeline Ward, who essentially, she started out as a traditional vet, and realized that her horses, all the horses she was treating, were not improving. They were all getting worse. They all had laminitis, or they were colicking easily, or they were all very anxious, and et cetera. It was just, had ulcers. And so she realized that the system that she was trying to work within was not actually healing horses. It's not helping them. The horses were getting worse. And so I'm not trying to get off on a tangent about her, but it's kind of a longer story of, you know, it's a bigger picture of my little miniature story. Cause this is 40 years for her versus, you know, I've been doing this now for, I don't know, 6 years, something like that. So, and she, you know, so she's been working with horses for, you know, like I said, well, now probably 30 years, doing it kind of holistically. And she uses homeopathy primarily. She's also schooled in lots of different body work, osteopathy, Bowen, etc. And so she's been a mentor for me for the last number of years as I've been dealing with all that. Well, as when I got, you know, going with Santo, she was the person that helped me out of that. And the first, you know, we gave him a homeopathic remedy to kind of change the, you know, change the dial for him a little bit. And sure enough, you know, his coat started to improve. He started to put weight on, and I was sold. I was like, you know, she could explain. She just hit the nail on the head what was going on with him. And so that point I dove into a mentorship with her, and that lasted, well, officially it was a year, but then she's been a friend and a mentor for me for a number of years now. So, and I still talk to her all the time. So I guess that was kind of how it got going. And, but then, you know, as it goes, people start reaching out to you and they're like, hey, I have this horse problem and my horse has this. And then we have all the ranch horses here too. I have my own pile of horses. And then we have all the ranch horses. And so to me, it was, important for me to be able to deal with issues on my own because like I said, I've lived remotely and I pretty much always am remote. And I felt I didn't want to be at the mercy of having to take my horses to a vet every time something happened. And so that was, in addition to helping Santo, is also, I wanted to be able to take care of my horses on my own merit. So that's been what I've been able to do now. And I feel confident caring for horses, but, you know, including my own, the ranch horses, and that eventually expanded into helping other people as well, because to me, it's so empowering. That's what I really want to just, you know, give to people, is for them to feel empowered to make decisions for their horse. And that they, you know, intuitively, they already know what's going on. They can see it. And, you know, to not try and outsource everything, but they have the ability to help their horse. Not, you know, and a lot of the time, I don't want to speak poorly on vets, but because I think there is definitely a place for vets, and I like to save trips to the vet for, you know, surgeries or emergency situations, but most other things I can deal with on my own. But I you know, people who I find that a lot of the time, if you stay out of the system, then people have less issues, so to speak. It could, because the drugs are not helping, you know, for that allergy or whatever that the horse has. Putting the horse on steroids is actually just suppressing that disease, so to speak, into the body. It's not actually making it go away. It's just making those symptoms disappear and the disease go further into the body. So it's not true healing. It's what you call, we used to be masking the symptoms or suppression. Yeah, it's been kind of an evolution of how I look at horses or animals too, because I do work with dogs. And so it's been a big evolution of how to view animals' health and how to approach, you know, what we consider problems or what are symptoms, but it's just the body speaking, it's the body communicating with us. And there's so much there that you can work with, and that's giving you a picture of how to go about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that. I'm like totally hanging on every word because I am so into all of this stuff. And I think when I first got started on holistic healing path, you know, alternative therapies, it was because of my own health. And then I really started to look into, and learning a lot about our medical system and things like that. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but that, our medicine is so great for, trauma. And, if I get in a car accident, I'm not going to go and see my naturopath or my functional medicine
Sure.
doctor to perform surgery on my arm, but so much of our medical system is, like you just mentioned, with the antibiotics and the steroids, is we're just throwing medications at stuff. We're not actually getting to the root problem. And for humans, I mean, where I think there's a lot more people that are starting to come onto this more natural way of healing things, like they used to do it, generations and generations ago. And why wouldn't we be doing the same thing for our animals? Could you talk a little bit more about approaches that you use for, maybe there's chronic health issues or health issues that you see with your own horses or clients that come up for you? What are some of the things that you kind of see happen often in some of the therapies that you use?
Yeah. So
That was a big question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was like 18 questions in one, but um
Yeah. Well, I guess so. A lot of people come to me because they've kind of run through the system, right? Where their horse is having, it has a dull coat, or it has allergies, or, it's having severe anxiety. And, but we'll just talk about like the physical stuff, right? And they've gone through the vet, and the vet's not able to help them anymore. They're kind of at a point where, like, I've tried everything. Um, it's not working. The vet doesn't have any answers. And that's where people kind of end up at my doorstep, like, please help. And
Yeah.
so I lean on, I mean, first of all, the way I work is I'll kind of, have people fill out a questionnaire, because that gives me a better picture, an overall picture of what's going on overall. And it's also just good for my record keeping. But uh, I'd like to help people with their management, because I find a lot of the time it's not just, an isolated thing. It could be that the feed is off, or the environment's off. Does the horse have turnout? What's its hoof care like, etc. So it's definitely, you have to kind of take all that into consideration as well. And I do, and I do help people in different aspects of that. And if it's not something that I am directly an expert in, I have a lot of partners that I work with, body workers, trainers, hoof care professionals, etc., that I can refer them to as well. So, but my main modality that I love and swear by is homeopathy, really. Um, and that's not, people don't get excited about homeopathy. It's not very sexy. I don't think it has that appeal, like even herbs or body work or whatever. But to me, it's been so transformational in what I can do with my horses and my dogs and myself. I use it with cattle sometimes. So it's just, it is really kind of the backbone of everything I do. I use it all the time, just everyday stuff, both acute and chronic. Like, because you're asking me about what are some chronic things that I see. But it has so many different applications. But first of all, I just, if people aren't interested in homeopathy, that's fine. And there's still a lot I can work with people with just, going through their program. What's your saddle fit like? When
Mhm.
was the last time this horse was floated? What's its feet look like? What is its work? How are you riding it, etc. Postural, development as well is a big one, right? So there's so many different components, and that's been kind of part of the evolution of my business, is that because I'm remote, I don't really offer body work necessarily. I have done that in the past, locally, but uh, I would I would prefer to kind of work remotely, so I'm not tied to any one location, right? We're in the 21st century now, and everything's on the internet. But so I've tried to develop my skills so that I can offer things over the phone with people, or even video, as well. But in trying to figure out what that looks like, and it's become much more of a holistic. It's not just let me help you with your horse on this one issue. It's become much bigger than that, because so much of the horse, um, us, right, and the environment it's in. And I think that's just a bit of a tangent, but I think that's one thing that we tend to greatly overlook is our effect on the horse, our emotions, our stress, how that plays into the horse. Because depending on the bond or the relationship that you have with your horse, you can have um, deep connection together where the horse is taking on your stuff, right? So whether you know it or not. And I think it can be staring. We all know this kind of conceptually, right? But sometimes when it's staring us in the face, we don't see it.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. Emotions are such a big thing that we overlook. And I think a lot of us try and strong arm our way through it. Like, oh, this horse is just buddy sour, so just put him by itself or ride him off and he'll get over it. No, 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 no. Like, no, it's so much deeper than that. And, my goal with people is to really develop a relationship that, where they have a working relationship with their horse. They feel confident to help their horse. And, um, but back to the emotional side, there's so much there that, if the horse is not, if it's shutting down, if it's a shut down horse, that we know this. I mean, this is becoming more common knowledge in, with people as well, but that shut down, repressing emotions will lead to health issues. Like, this is not even debatable anymore, right? We know this. So, making sure that you're aware of how your horse is feeling, that addressing that anxiety, not with just like more work or training, but what's causing the anxiety. And a lot of times that spookiness, that anxiousness is just discomfort in the body and is so misunderstood. And so I really hope to, I would like to, show that to people where, how this is all connected. It's not separate, right? That TMJ issue is not separate from their anxious spookiness, is separate from their dull coat, right? So it's all the same. It's all the same animal, and they're all linked together. So I don't think you can just rely on just body work, or it's just this, they just have ulcers, or, whatever it is, it's all connected together. And so how do we kind of untangle that?
Yeah, I love how you touched on the emotional piece too, because like you said, it's so overlooked. And even when you're training a horse, you have to get control of your own emotions, because a horse can read our emotions and what we're feeling before we even know. And why wouldn't that come out when you're talking about their health, and when you're interacting with that horse? Very much like you just said with our emotions, that when we suppress our emotions, it can cause disease. What's that saying, that disease is dis-ease or something like that in the body. So yeah, I really loved how you touched on the emotional piece, and that's really cool that you bring that into your sessions with people, because like you said, it is so overlooked, and we're always kind of looking for that, like, okay, oh, they have ulcers, okay, here's the one solution for that. Or, oh, they have something else, okay, there should just be one thing that we just throw at it and make it better. And if you step back and look at the entire picture, then you can really start getting into some healing. I was on the website again, and what is horse element typing? I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, so that was another thing I learned with Madeline. So it's based on the traditional Chinese medicine element typing.
Okay.
You do it for people, but this has just been applied to horses. So um, there are 5 types: wood, water, earth, metal, and fire. And so, in short, each one of those describes essentially a personality type. There are certain combination types. But so, for example, a metal horse. The metal horse is kind of your very traditional ranch horse, right? They're not very warm and fuzzy. They usually have a broad chest, kind of a broad head. They can be sensitive or touchy, but really they're just the steady, not a lot of fuss. As long as they know what their job is, then they're happy to do it. They don't really care if you tell them thank you at the end of the ride, right? And the fire horse is, kind of your emotional. They're more prone to anxiety, outward expression, whereas, for example, the metal horse or an earth horse type, they have more of an inward. Like if they have emotional distress, it's more likely to be suppressed. Whereas with a fire horse or a wood horse, fire horse, their emotions are they're wearing them on their sleeve. Fire horses, like they cannot stand any sort of pain. You will know if there is anything wrong with the fire horse because they are kind of like the drama queens of the horse world. I love my fire horses. I have a couple of them, but they're very affectionate. They like to be groomed. They're very sensitive. And so with each of these types, there's kind of like when they're in balance and like, what their attributes that they're amazing. And then when they're out of balance, how does that look? So, like I said, for an out of balance fire horse, it would be anxiety. They might be prone to heart problems because the heart is associated with fire. If for a metal or a wood horse, so each of the types has an organ associated or multiple organs associated with it. So with the wood, it's the liver and the gallbladder. And so the liver or a wood horse might be more prone to liver issues, and the liver, anger is held in the liver. So with a wood horse, you might have, they tend to get angry. As like a fire horse, they might have an outburst or like a temper tantrum, whereas a wood horse, they get angry. My husband has a wood horse, and I think I have one of mine is a wood fire. But anyway, with the wood horse, like her eye will change. She will get angry, like really mean in her eye. It's very distinctive, and they're very kind of forward horses. Anyway, I could go on about it, but each type, it has, an association with an organ and or organs, emotions. And so they have, like I said, when they're balanced or kind of out of balance. And all it is just a framework, right? So homeopathy is kind of a framework to look at. I look at the symptom picture of the animal, and that's kind of the framework for how I go about choosing a remedy, or each remedy, vice versa. And then same for the element typing, is it's kind of a framework in which I look at horses, and they do work synchronistically too. With the element typing as well, different horses respond to different kind of training styles, etc. So it can be enlightening, and it's at a basic level, it's just fun to know about your horse, to read about your horse and go, oh, my horse is that. Yeah, my horse is that exact same thing. Or, yeah, my horse has, is fine boned and a small head and big fiery eyes. It's pretty remarkable how much it nails horse personalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so like I said, it's just a framework, and for which I kind of look at horses as well. It kind of gives me, I can usually pick out what type of horses, just by talking to somebody.
Okay.
And it can kind of, enlighten me to, how that horse might be behaving, etc. So.
Yeah. That was a question I had. Like, can you usually tell right away which horse they are?
Yeah, so there's a few different combination types, so those are a little bit trickier. And then one thing that throws people off is that sometimes you can have a horse that's just way out of balance and it's appearing like something else, but it's, when it goes back to its balanced state, then you'll see its like true personality shine, which might be something different from what you thought it was. And then sometimes, like for example, metal horses. So water controls metal and in the life cycle, in the creation cycle. And metal horses might be prone to be a little bit spookier, and so they might come off like a water horse, but they're not actually a water horse. They're just a metal horse that's a little bit out of balance. So there's a little bit of like nuance to it, and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's mainly just, you know, it's fun. It's fun once you get into it, and I can definitely, we can talk about it more. I'm happy to, but it is kind of a bigger subject.
Yeah. I mean, do you notice a lot of the time, like say you're trying to pinpoint a type, do you notice that a lot of it has to do with their training or previous training? Kind of how does that play into it?
No, it's kind of just their makeup, like who they
Okay.
are.
Okay.
But incorrect training can definitely throw them out of whack, right? And change their behavior. But in general, they kind of respond based on their type. That's just their makeup, right? Their personality, and that will kind of determine how they respond to something. So, for example, the metal horse, right? Our good old ranch horse. They If they get confused, they'll brace. Like they kind of stop and brace because
Mhm.
it's like almost like the cogs get jammed. So if you just go back and address like where they got confused, then once they understand it, you probably won't have to repeat yourself. They're just like, okay, got it, moving on. And so it kind of, whereas like, so for a water horse, like water horses their emotion is fear. And so the water horse, when they're fearful of something, they might just flee. Like they'll run, just get away from it. Whereas some horses will stand and stop and look. Some horses will run. Some horses will, it's like you can give any one particular circumstance, and then each different element type will respond in its own way. So it's more of like, um, yeah, it kind of gives you an idea of how they behave more so than the other way around, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how incredible, like you just said in the examples, to be able to know that about your horse and try to understand, where some of the behavioral stuff is coming up for them. I mean, that's all incredible information to have. And then addressing it from there, kind of having that as like a foundation and then moving on from there.
Yeah,
That's,
and one thing that's really helpful about it too is to kind of, if you can kind of understand it, and then you can understand what personalities you get along with well. Like some people, like I would say like a metal horse and a earth horse would be more, kind of your beginner friendly horses. Whereas like your wood horse or your wood, earth, or fire or water can be very challenging horses, particularly the wood horse that, um, like I said, they get angry, and they can be the kind of horses that will get on the fight and be aggressive if you
mhm.
don't know how to handle that. And they're very forward. They can be very pushy and stubborn, and so they can be a very challenging horse if you're not um, comfortable with that, and you may not get along with that kind of horse at all. So it's definitely it's something to keep in mind anyway when you're shopping for a horse, because you just may be incompatible with certain personality types. And that's, I like to point that out to people sometimes too, when when they're shopping for a horse, or um I think we do have compatibility with horses, so yeah.
Yeah. Is there one thing that sticks out to you the most about what people come to you in terms of problems with their horse? I mean, I know you mentioned allergies and stuff like that, but is there kind of one thing that you can pinpoint?
Not particularly. A lot Most of the time it's like people think it's one issue, right? Like they might just say my horse has a poor coat, but once you kind of start digging into it a little bit further, it's like, oh well, yeah, they don't like the bit, and they're reluctant to move out, and it's people. We like to just focus on one thing, but there's a much bigger picture that we may be overlooking. And
Yeah.
so I find that it's not just one particular thing; it's usually a much bigger issue.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more about Remuda Bodywork? So that's your main business for all of this. How did that start? Where did you get the idea from it? How did that evolve?
Well, I guess like I said, I started having friends come to me, and people reaching out, just saying, hey, I've got this issue going on with my horse. Can you help me? And so it just kind of started organically, really, because I was learning a lot and I wanted to help people, and it became, a passion of mine. And I saw so many people as well, um, you know, feeling helpless,
Mm-hmm.
and like there was nothing they could do, and there's nothing the vet could do. And so, like I said, I really wanted to help empower people to be able to help their horse and take steps to improve the horse's wellness. So, um, yeah, it's kind of happened organically, I guess. And Remuda is, just kind of your saddle horses, right? And so that's kind of where a lot of this started, was that I was helping my own horses and the ranch horses. And I do a lot of body work as well, and I do a lot of body work here. And I have, like I said, I've helped other people with body work, and I sometimes I'll offer body work remotely. Teaching people how to do acupressure, for example. It's pretty that lends itself a little bit better to learning remotely. So sometimes I will help people with that if I feel like the horse they could do, would benefit from some body work. But yeah, I just nowadays, like I said, it's grown into something much bigger than just, let me help you with homeopathy, and they help you with this health issue via homeopathy. It's grown into something that's like, more of a management care, kind of um, framework, I guess, or more holistic path. And so much of it too is, which has been a bit of a learning curve as well, is the owners and the equine partners, the people, they're caretakers, right, working with the clients. um so much of working with horses is working with the people.
Mm-hmm.
um and that's been huge, because sometimes you have to teach people to look at it in a different way, or understand how their anxiety or their stress is affecting the horse, for example. There's just, yeah, it's become much more of um, I can't, I feel like, I can help the horse. I feel confident that I can help the horse, but I have to help the person help the horse, right? And they have to
Yeah.
understand what I'm talking about, and why it's important, and, how they may be helping or hindering the horse's progress.
Do you find that challenging, or do you find that if you're working with someone, that if it's more so the person that might be having some issues that are maybe causing some of the issues in the horse, do you feel like people are a little bit more reluctant, or do you feel like they're pretty open about learning? Because when you start kind of digging into people's emotions in that way, sometimes a lot of us tend to be like, oh, I don't want to go there just yet, or
Yeah. Yeah. It just depends on the person, right? It depends on how
yeah,
much they want to learn, or, but the horse is always a reflection of us,
yeah.
always. And same with our dogs. Yeah, I think, my friend would be okay with me telling this story. Recently, uh, my friend reached out to me and she said, my dog just had a seizure. And, so she went to the vet, and the vet, of course, didn't have anything to say. And they were just going to prescribe the dog seizure medication. And so she said, what do I do? So she was waiting for the test results back. And so we started talking about it. I said, so what's going on? Like, are you stressed out? Because she's, in the process of a move. And she's, no, um, I've been really fine lately. And we kept talking about it, and it dawned on her that she had been openly talking about putting one of her horses down that week. And the dog is extremely bonded to that horse. Um, and so, sure enough, this dog was being affected by the potential of losing his friend. And a couple days later, of course, the blood work comes back totally normal. And but I at that point I'd already suggested a homeopathic remedy to give to the dog, and also just to talk to the dog. Said you need to talk to him and tell him what's going on, why this is necessary, and so and he started to improve before she even gave him a remedy. And then he had a seizure again a week later. Sorry, I'm just trying to like piece this together in my mind. And he had a seizure again a week later, and she's, I don't know what to do. This is scary. And so she, I think at that point she gave the remedy after that, because I think it come in the mail or something, or we finally decided on the remedy. Anyway, so she finally gave him the homeopathic remedy. And sure enough, like the next day, she texted me and said, he is bouncing off the walls. He has so much energy. He is like amazing right now. Whereas before the whole week he had chronic anxiety, and he was always extremely anxious, and he was having diarrhea. And sure enough, she gave him the homeopathic remedy, and the dog the next day, like I said, was amazing. She said his energy is like 9 out of 10, but he's not anxious. He's just like amazing. And then the diarrhea kind of came and went, and then it finally just went away, and the dog leveled out. And even she said, I talked to her recently, and she said her friends had come over and said that the dog acts like more calm than usual. He seems more balanced. And I just and hopefully now I think she's going to be able to find a new just a retirement home for that horse. And but it's, to me, that's such an amazing, profound story of the impact of stress, emotions, relationships, all these, that play into our animals. And I think we just grossly overestimate it, or underestimate it anyway, because it's so important. And, we don't realize how, just her talking about this horse, that energy was out, that the dog could pick up on it, and he understood what was going on. And we don't think about that at all. So to me, I think it's just such a neat story between, it's just like that, dog horse relationship that I think is adorable. But I just think it's amazing. And then I'm so proud of how he's doing too, that he's come full circle. So, and that just happened within the course of, 3 weeks or something like that. So it's pretty neat.
I mean, that's absolutely fascinating. And these animals are just so incredibly intelligent and emotional that they can pick up on the littlest things that we don't even realize.
And I guess I should mention, like, it goes without saying that the dog hasn't had another seizure since. So yeah. And whereas, the traditional route might have just been give the dog seizure medications, what's, assuming that he might have like a neurological or bigger issue, but no, this is an emotional issue.
Yeah. Wow. Is there another story that you can think of, or another example that has really stuck out to you in your years of work with a horse or a client?
My favorite are just the people who there's not any one severe issue going on. It's just kind of overall the horse is not doing well. It's not thriving. And we start making adjustments and start making changes, and the horse just really comes out of their shell. And most of the time people just kind of accept that as like the horse, like a shut down horse, they kind of accept that. And and so I think it's so cool when a horse does start to come out of its shell. I mean, one thing, so there's a particular remedy that oftentimes I'll use for horses that do have that shutdownness, right? They're kind of withdrawn, they seem depressed, but they're a little resentful. And then oftentimes what will happen is that once you give that remedy, I'm not saying what these remedies are because I don't really want people just to go about willy-nilly, right? Trying them. But and what often will happen is that the horse will get like really emotional, like expressive or aggressive, that I'll often recommend don't ride the horse, for a couple of days after giving it because they may buck or bite or whatever, but that's just those emotions surfacing. They have to be surfaced and healed,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's over. So don't freak out if your horse is kind of a jerk for a few days because, this is just that stuff coming up. And so it passes, and the horse, comes out on the other end of that as being much more balanced and, um, more, just softer and more, sometimes more affectionate, etc. So I love those kind of stories where, people didn't even, they're like, he's just kind of off. Like, I just want to improve this one little thing, but then the horse overall just blossoms and the coat becomes really nice, and they've become affectionate and happy to do their work. And, um, yeah, I think those are the really inspiring stories.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating and just such interesting work. I mean, yeah, that we've got to look at the entire animal, not just the one issue. Well, thank you so much, Meredith. And I'll just kind of ask a few more last questions here. I usually ask this question, and I've been going back and forth in my mind because I feel like this question is asked a lot, but I always love to hear people's answers. What is a good piece of advice that you give to one of your clients or somebody that's interested in this work that you would suggest to them?
Yeah. So, um, people often ask about, worming their horse, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And or this is just one example of what I'm talking about. But we always want to just worm our horse, um, because we don't want them to be wormy, right? But why is your horse wormy? Are the other horses wormy? So we always want to look at the symptom, like the horse is wormy, or um, you know, I'm just using allergies or poor coat because that seems to be a very common thing. Um, we always want to just treat that symptom, but for a horse that has sweet itch, right? Well, are the other horses experiencing sweet itch, or is it just that horse?
Hmm.
Is that just that horse wormy, or are all the horses wormy? So if it's just that horse that's experiencing this issue, why is that? Look deeper. Don't just try and make that issue go away, right? Because that's a fundamental. So I always like to say, a healthy horse does not have worms, right? So to
Okay.
speak. So a horse that has a functioning immune system is able to fend itself from worms. So what is it that's impeding that immune system from being able to, um, not be able to fend off parasites? So just looking at it deeper, not asking what do I give my horse for worms, but why is my horse wormy?
Yeah. That's so interesting because I was taught you worm, 3, 4 times a year. Obviously depends on where you are, but where I was, you essentially worm with the change of seasons. And I give all natural, herbal as wormer, but that is such a great point. I never really saw worms for a few times, but I always gave it just because that's what I was taught. You give it 4 times a year no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just one instance, right? But whenever a horse is, if it's just that one horse that's being affected by this issue, then what is it?
Hmm.
Oftentimes, it all links back to the immune system. I'll just give you a hint, but
Yes.
with most things actually, but and yeah, even a lot of, yeah. Anyway, but yes, so it's always ask a deeper question, ask different questions, not how do I make this go away, or what do I give to deal with this issue, but
Yeah.
why is this happening to my horse?
Yeah. Thank you. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Meredith. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us some great information. This has really been fascinating. Where can people find you? How can people work with you?
Yeah, Instagram, just my name, Meredith Barrett, with an underscore. And you can also check out my website, bermudabodyworks.com. Those would be the two best places, probably.
Cool. Is there one maybe book or educational piece of information that if somebody's interested in this kind of work, that they could read, or one that is a favorite of yours that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Well, actually, my mentor, she wrote a book called Holistic Horsekeeping.
Okay.
Um, it's just a small little book that goes over kind of holistic care of horses and management, um, just for the average horse owner. So I think that's a really good place for people to start. And it talks about these things that we're talking about, medications, worming, um, feed, nutrition, etc. So I think that's a really good kind of all rounder, good place for people to start. It's by
Great.
Madeline Ward, Dr. Madeline Ward.
Okay. Awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes too for people, and your website and where they can find you too. But Meredith, thank you so much. This was a great conversation, and I really appreciate you talking with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. I really appreciate you having me on, and I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks so much.
Thanks.